Okay, so we've been completing the square, solving by completing the square. So we're going to just continue on with that for the next 3 problems. Again, just make sure you understand the steps. Honestly, if you want to make sure you understand them, I would just do it yourself. Go ahead and try these and then go back in and watch my video. But like I said, if you're still needing help, then go ahead and watch me do some more. So again, the first step is move that C over to the other side. So this gets moved to the other side. Okay. Your next step is to take half of your B. So in this case, B is 1. So when I divide it by 2, I get 1/2. And then that won't simplify. So we're going to square it and get 1/4. So again, this is where I said to you, a lot of times, I'm going to move this down real quick just because my other work is in the way. A lot of times when I put this here, I will just put it as plus, in this case, -1/2 squared. But then over here, I go ahead and put the 1/4, okay? And the reason why I would do that is because when I come to, again to factor it, it's always the x and the -1/2. Okay? And you are going to want to go ahead and get a common denominator here and get an improper fraction. So that would be what? 12/4. That would be 13/4. Okay? Now I'm going to do my square root method. I'm going to square root both sides. So I get x minus 1/2 equals, and this is plus or minus the square root of 13/4. Okay? Now, by the time you do this, we should have discussed how to simplify that in class. So I'm going to slide over just a little bit, give me some room. When you go to do the square root of 13/4, actually, I'm going to just, let's see, I'm going to kind of do it down at the, well, maybe I can fit it to the side. One of the things, when you have the square root of 13/4, or any fraction underneath the radical, the first thing that you want to do is break it apart. Okay, that is just a step, is to break it into the numerator and the denominator. The next step is to just look to see if either one of those is a perfect square that can be easily simplified. And in this case, 4 is, so that is the number 2. And you've got the square root of 13 in the numerator. Okay? And that is where the simplified form of it. Now, what you can't do, again, we'll have discussed this in class, is leave it with the radical in the denominator. That is not allowed. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and just do a substitution. 1/2 equals plus or minus the square root of 13/2. And then again, I'm going to add my 1/2 to both sides. So my final answer is x equals 1/2 plus or minus square root of 13/2. And that's the form I would just leave it in. Okay? Let's try another one. So the next thing to show you is what happens if this is not 1. Okay? And in this case, it is not 1, but what I do notice is that I have a common factor. So remember, we always try that. So if A is not 1, look to see if you have a common factor. We will do another set where they don't have common factors, but right now they do. So I'm going to take out a 3, and I get x squared minus x plus 3 equals 0. Okay? And so I need to factor, again, this piece using my well, I'm gonna add a step. Let me back up just a second. I'm gonna add a step. So the first thing that I would do, just to make it easier, and this will also lead us into what we're going to be doing next, is once you factor that out, we're going to divide it off. Okay, we're going to divide that off. Okay, so I have x squared minus x plus 3 equals 0. okay? And then we're going to follow the same steps we did before. We're going to move that c value over to the other side. We're going to take half of the 1 and square it. So that would be plus negative 1/2 squared, which again over here would be 1/4. This will factor then to be x minus 1/2 squared, quantity squared, equals, and again, this now is a negative 12/4 plus 1/4. So this is now going to be a minus 11/4. Okay? And again, now we're going to do the square root of both sides. So x minus 1/2 equals plus or minus the square root of a negative 11/4. Now, again, by the time you get to this or get to an example like this, we should have discussed this in class. One is you cannot have a negative under the radical, and so that is, again, where our imaginary number occurs. So a negative 1, remember, is I. We're going to take out that negative 1. And so when you go to simplify this, rewrite that. I'm going to do the same steps I did earlier. I'm going to take the square root of a negative 11 over the square root of 4. The square root of a negative 11 is the I, because that's the, let me just give you an extra step here. So this is the square root of a negative 1 times the square root of 11, which would be I times the square root of 11, and square root of 11 will not simplify, so that's as far as that'll go. Square root of 4 is 2, okay? And then that would be your simplified form. So we're going to put that in our equation. So plus or minus I square root of 11 over 2. Move your 1/2 over by adding it to both sides. And there's your final answer. Okay? Now, personally, if I was doing this, I would put this somewhere over to the side. You do want to put it on your paper so that I can see that you did it. But again, figure out where would be a good spot to do it on your paper. Okay? So let's do one more and then we'll be done. Okay, so again, the first thing that I'm going to do is I notice I've got 2, 4, and 8. Now I'm going to do this one. I'm going to tweak it, do it just a little bit different. I'm going to go ahead and move the C over, because remember earlier we said always move the C over. So I'm just going to go ahead and move the C first. So let me just show you. I'm going to move the C. There's a negative 8. Now I'm going to factor out that 2. And when I factor out that 2, I'm not going to worry about it over here on this other side. Okay, there it is. Okay, and I'm going to divide by 2. Get that divided off. Okay, so it doesn't matter which way I do it. If I had factored out that 2 here, then it would have been very similar to this problem over here. I would have had 0 divided by that 2, which would have gave me 0. And then that still would have given me from this 8, the 4 to move over. So either way works, whichever way you prefer, it doesn't matter. Probably less work maybe to do this step, I don't know. Okay, next step again, complete that square. So we're going to take half of 2 and square it. So that would be half of 2 would be 1, and 1 squared there, and 1 squared over here would be just 1, okay? So my perfect square trinomial would be x plus, and again, it's whatever I was squaring, and in this case equals a negative 3. I'm going to run the square root method. So I get x plus 1 equals plus or minus. Again, if you want to, you can go ahead and simplify this because this is the square root of negative 3. So the negative makes it an I, and then the square root of 3 cannot be simplified. And then I'm just going to move my 1 over. So x equals a negative 1 plus or minus I square root of 3. Okay? So you do need to be sure that you are very comfortable with completing the square. We'll do quite a few of these. But again, completing the square is a method that we will use quite a bit. It is a method of solving that I know Mrs. Johnson and Mr. Fortino both have said that they use a lot. So again, whether you're going to one class or the other next year, you're going to need to know how to complete the square.